Some stories sound like urban legends. A haunted house in the woods, with whispers in the attic, and footsteps in the snow that lead nowhere. But what if I told you this wasn't folklore? It was real. In 1922, a whole family was slaughtered on a remote Bavarian farm called Hinterkaifeck. To this day, no one knows who did it or why. And the strangest part, signs of something lurking in that house appeared before the murders ever happened. This case has been called Germany's most famous unsolved murder. And honestly, the details read more like a ghost story than a crime report. Let's take a walk through the farmhouse of Hinterkaifeck. Welcome to Supernatural Signals. Today, let's take a walk through the farmhouse of Hinterkaifeck. Alright, so let's set the stage. Hinterkaifeck was a small farmstead tucked away in the German countryside, about 43 miles north of Munich. In 1922, it was home to the Gruber family. Andreas, 63, and his wife, Kazilia, 72. Their widowed daughter, Victoria, was in her mid-30s, who lived there too, along with her two children, 7-year-old Kazilia and 2-year-old Joseph. It was the kind of place where isolation was normal. The farm was surrounded by woods, and the nearest neighbors were far enough away that you wouldn't hear screams at night. The family had recently hired a new maid, Maria, who arrived on March 31st. She was meant to replace their old maid, who had just quit because she believed the house was haunted. Maria never had a chance to unpack her things. Now, let's take a look at the strange events that occurred before the murders. In the weeks before the killings, Andreas Gruber started noticing odd things. One day, he saw footprints in the snow leading from the forest straight to the farmhouse, but none were leading back. Whoever made them had gone in and seemingly never came out. Then there were noises in the attic. Andreas searched up there more than once, but every time he found nothing. On top of that, a set of house keys went missing. Newspapers they didn't subscribe to appeared inside the house. And remember, their old maid had quit because she believed something was in that home with them. But the Grubers tried to carry on, even though it was clear something wasn't right at the farmhouse. Now let's get into the night of the murders. On the night of March 31st, the killer made their move. One by one, family members were somehow drawn into the barn. First Andreas, then his wife, then Victoria, and finally little Kazilia, just 7 years old. Each of them was struck down with a mattock, a heavy farming tool. Inside the house, Maria, the maid, and baby Joseph were also murdered. Maria had barely started her first day of work. Joseph was found in his crib. It's brutal enough that 6 people were murdered. But here's the detail that sends shivers down my spine. The killer didn't leave. For days after the murders, the farm showed signs of life. The cows had been milked, the dogs had been fed, smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was still living in that farmhouse, with the victim's body hidden in the barn and house. The bodies weren't discovered until April 4th, when neighbors came by to check on the family after noticing they hadn't been seen in days. Now, let's get into some theories that roam the internet with this one. Of course, there's the family scandal theory. It's important to note Victoria was the center of controversy. She had been forced into an incestuous relationship with her father, Andreas, something that had even gone to court years earlier. Rumors swirled that Joseph, the baby, might not have been her husband's child, but her father's. Others claimed he was the child of a secret lover. Could the tangled web of scandal and shame have led to murder? Then there's the robbery theory. At first, some believed the family was targeted for money, but nothing was taken. The family's valuables were untouched. Then, of course, there's the wandering killer theory. Another possibility is a drifter or a serial killer passing through the Bavarian countryside. Someone who stumbled across the farm saw the isolation and decided it was the perfect place to kill. The brutality of the murders and the calmness to stay after has led some to believe the killer was used to this. And then, of course, the paranormal angle. Now, this part feels like it could be straight out of a horror story. The footsteps in the snow, the missing keys, the noises in the attic. Someone or something was already living in the house before the family died. Was it a flesh and blood killer lying in wait? Or something more sinister? Something darker that refused to let the family escape. Now let's get into my own personal thoughts and theories. Obviously, I lean toward the supernatural with this case. There are just too many strange details, like the footsteps and the noises in the attic and the missing keys, for me to just see it as a murder. It feels like something darker was happening there. Also, if it was one of the family members that killed each other, how would they been able to kill themselves with the weapon of choice? It makes no sense. But what I keep coming back to is the original maid. You might have forgotten about her from the beginning of the story, but she really matters here. She tried to show, explain, and warn the family. She said something was wrong in that house, and when nobody listened, she gave up and left. It makes me wonder, what if they had taken her seriously? What if they had believed her instead of dismissing the fears of superstition? And honestly, that reminds me a lot of my real life. My boyfriend and I have had that experience so many times, whether it's in everyday life or even in social media world. We've both had to learn, even though we can be stubborn, to sometimes let go and just let people find out on their own. To me, this is one of the most chilling parts of Hinterkaifeck. Not just the murders themselves, but the way a warning was ignored. And that makes this case not only terrifying and devastating, but also a reminder of how dangerous it can be when we silence the people who notice things others refuse to see. Alrighty, so before we close out, I had another thought while editing this video that I couldn't shake and wanted to add in. We've talked about the strange details of the farm still being cared for after the murders. Like the cows being milked, the food eaten, the fires burning. And like I said before, I want to look at this as a paranormal perspective. What if it wasn't just a killer sticking around? So looking at it that way, what if it was a spirit, something like it felt like it owned the farmhouse, and decided the family wasn't taking good enough care of it? Almost like it stepped in after the killings, it kept things running on its own terms. But then another idea hit me. What if it wasn't only paranormal? What if it was a glitch in time itself? The idea that the family, in some strange overlapping timeline, kept living out their routines even though they were already gone. Their bodies were confirmed dead. We know that from the decomposition reports. But maybe what neighbors witnessed wasn't the killer at all, but echoes of the family in a misfired moment of reality. I've experienced my own strange glitches since my influx of paranormal activity years ago. And it does make me wonder, could Hinterkaifeck have been not just a haunting or a crime scene, but a fracture in time? So, what do you think? Was this a crime of passion, a wandering murderer, or something we still can't explain? Drop your theories in the comments. I want to hear them. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay curious and stay tuned into the supernatural. Thanks for watching.